Welcome to the Money Tales podcast. I'm Cammie Doder.
And I'm Sandy Brager.
Today's guest, Dr. Julia Edelman, is a trailblazing OB-GYN and menopause specialist who turned a frugal, hands-on childhood into a purpose-driven medical career. At a time when women in medicine were not taken seriously or given the same opportunities, Julia persevered with grit and grace, proving that passion and persistence can pave the way for lasting impact. She shares how agency, determination, and clear values shaped her life choices, especially when money and medicine collided.
Here are 3 key money topics you'll hear in this conversation. First, giving kids financial responsibility early builds confidence, independence, and agency. Second, true fulfillment comes from pursuing purpose over profit and investing in work that matters. And third, proactive care and prevention in both health and money can prevent much bigger problems down the road. Now it's our pleasure to bring you Dr. Julia Edelman's Money Tales. Welcome to Money Tales, Dr. Julia Edelman.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
We are excited to talk with you today. I think we'll definitely get to the intersection of money and medicine. And we want to talk about your latest book, The Savvy Women's Guide to Menopause, Before, During, and Beyond. And congratulations to you on that recent publication.
Thank you.
As I was thinking about the conversation today, I was reminded of a time when I was working with a client of ours who had a friend who had a child who had severe medical challenges. He needed hospitalization, he needed specialty care, and his mom, she was a single mother, didn't have the financial resources to pay for that care. So our client, who is a good friend of the mother, wanted to help out. And she'd been helping her friend out for a bit, making gifts under the annual gift exclusion. It's just a certain amount of money that you can give each year without having to trigger any gift tax implications. She made those gifts to the mother and the child. But when the medical expenses started to really build up, the family was stuck. I reminded our client that in addition to the annual gift exclusions, any U.S. taxpayer is allowed to make an unlimited amount of gifts for medical care as long as they pay the healthcare providers directly. And that's exactly what our client did. She started paying all the doctor's bills, the hospital bills, and all the other care that could be covered under this unlimited allowance. And by the way, for our listeners, not only can you pay an unlimited amount of someone else's medical expenses, but you can also do the same with education, as long as you're paying those bills directly to the providers.
Cindy, these are such important tips. And if you have the financial ability and the desire, what an incredible gift. And to know you can do so without having tax penalties as well. That's really incredible.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know about this.
No, I didn't know about that.
Oh, you didn't?
I knew about the first thing you said, but I did not know about the unlimited medical expenses or unlimited educational expenses paid direct. That's fantastic.
Yeah, most people do not know about it. So I did want to highlight that today for listeners because we talk a lot on Money Tales about how money is a tool that you can use to help others. And if you have the financial means to be able to help other people, and especially when they're in a healthcare crunch, which like this family was pretty awesome. Not only were the medical bills expensive, but this woman had to care for her child, so she couldn't work as much.
Right.
It was a very big financial toll on the family. And our client was able to make meaningful changes in the life of her friend and help support her friend and her friend's child, who she cared very much about.
It's wonderful.
That is wonderful. What a story, and thanks for sharing. And Julia, it was great to hear from you for a second there. Would you kick things off and tell us a little bit about yourself and share a couple pivotal moments in your life that really impacted who you are today?
I was very fortunate. I grew up in a household with 2 professional parents, which was very unusual at the time. At the time, all my friends had stay-at-home mothers. And my mother was a pediatrician, which is extremely unusual at that time. Even more unusual was that she worked. So at that time, some women went to medical school, but then they never practiced. And many of them married physicians and then The male physician spouse worked and the female stayed home. But she worked. And my dad was extremely supportive. He was not a physician. He was an engineer, but he was incredibly forward-thinking, so way ahead of his time. He was very supportive of her working. He built her an office in our house. So when you walked in our house, the whole first level was her office. And we all worked in her office for no pay, I might add.
That happens.
Yeah, but we all worked in her office for her practice. So I did almost every role over my entire childhood. And one summer, my dad handed me a Greg typing book and said, Julia, teach yourself to type because you need that skill. But he wanted me to help type bills and things for her. But we all participated in all the aspects, help clean it, help whatever. So I learned a lot of medicine, and she loved medicine. My mother was always studying every day. She would read at lunchtime and keep up. So she was a wonderful role model professionally. And I would say they were a good role model as a couple because they were very supportive of each other. And that was really uncommon at the time. It was a time where roles were very set, and women stayed home and went to work. So I worked in both their offices, actually. I worked in my dad's engineering office as a secretary, which turned out to be a very good skill when you get to electronic medical records because you can type fast. But yeah, so I learned a lot about different things from them. And also I was fortunate because I saw in my friends at the time in high school and in middle school, a lot of their parents weren't concerned with their academic interests or their career goals. They just felt they would grow up and be parents, which is also very fulfilling and also the hardest job there is. But they weren't too concerned about their academic trajectory. And my father was very different. So it wasn't just my mother, I think, as a role model, but my father who really listened and cared how I spent my time, And I did have two brothers, and of course he cared a lot about them too. He had a very advanced idea of how you should spend your time, reading, learning a musical instrument, that kind of thing, not just putting on makeup or whatever it was that, you wanted to do. But as far as money goes, we were comfortable. We were a two-income household, but my parents grew up with parents who were in the Depression, so they were very, very frugal. So we didn't go out to eat a lot. We went to the library for our books. It wasn't extravagant by any means. And we were also extremely self-sufficient, despite the fact that we had a two-income household. We did everything, all of us. We did all the landscaping, all the house cleaning, all the cooking, and supported this business in our house.
Was that important for them to have you do this work?
Apparently, yes, I guess so. I think my mom tried delegating some, but she decided we were better at it than they were, which we probably were. So that was a bit different too, I think, than most of my peers. My brothers and I grew up to be very hardworking people because we had a lot to do. But it was a very loving household, and we also had a lot of fun.
Wow, Julia, this is beautiful. And I'm curious, as you're growing up in a frugal household, you're being taught to work really hard, and you're getting exposure to different aspects of business as well.
Yes.
When did you start learning about money?
When I worked in my dad's office, in the engineering office, I did get paid. I had my own checking account. That was in high school. I worked Saturday mornings. In the summer, I worked a few days a week. I used that checking account to pay for my college applications. So I sent them myself. Nobody looked at them, which was kind of cool because,
that's great.
Of course, I didn't know anything. I was the oldest of three. So at that time, the guidance counselors weren't dedicated to helping girls get into college. They just figured whatever they do is fine. So you were kind of on your own. It was just interesting. It was nice to have that freedom and independence and own your own mistakes. I visited the colleges myself. I had no idea what I was doing. It was fine. I think it gave me a lot of sense of agency, so I had my checkbook. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough to, do the applications and get there.
It sounds like you were very independent at the time.
Yeah, I was.
I'm curious to know, did you know that you wanted to study to become a physician when you were applying to college?
So I wanted to have the option. So my mother loved medicine, and she was very good at it. And we used to go into the city, into New York City a lot, which is where my parents were from, where I was born. She would take us on the train and say, what does that person have? So we kind of learned physical diagnosis. I don't know how HIPAA compliant, well, she didn't know them, but, I learned like gait analysis and, all kinds of stuff we could analyze, which was kind of interesting. So all three of us learned that. she loved medicine. She talked about medicine. We helped her in the office, when that was possible. Like I'd help her see infants or whatever. So I learned record keeping and that sort of thing. So I thought it was very interesting. I didn't want to be a pediatrician. I think she would have liked that so she could hand over her practice. But I wanted to keep the option. So I decided to major in geology. And then I thought if I didn't want to do medicine, then I could do other things. So that's what I did. So I applied as a geology major, which was very unusual at the time.
That is unusual. I'm curious, as someone who did end up pursuing her medical degree,
Yeah,
I think of that as just a long journey
very long.
and expensive and not necessarily, lucrative for at least for the near term.
No, you don't go in it to make money.
No, you don't go into it.
No,
So
you
tell us
don't.
about what was your passion at that time and purpose as you pursued your medical degree. And then how did you think about money? Because money is a reality, though. It costs money to do all this.
So when I went through college, I didn't declare myself as a pre-med, and I didn't go to the pre-med office and say, what do I do to get in? I just took all the science courses. I liked science. But I also took a lot of humanities. I took English and a lot of philosophy and all the things that I wanted to take. So I was fortunate to be able to do that. And they had a particular formula at the time. They thought everybody should be a biochemistry or biology major. And I didn't want to be a biochemistry major. I had other ideas. So I didn't really consult them. And they also thought the formula was you should go volunteer in an emergency room. But I had worked in medical office. I had some idea of some aspect. And I really didn't want to go work in the emergency room because I was just going to be a unused appendage. I mean, what's a college kid going to do in an emergency room? I knew that much. So I just thought that wouldn't be that interesting for me. So I do like writing. So they had an opportunity for a student to be a representative. They had one of the first health plans in the country, and it served all the students and all the faculty and all the employees. And they wanted a student rep, and nobody wanted to do it. I mean, this is not something people want to do. So I said, well, I would do that. So I went and did it. And then they wanted someone to write the health plan newsletter. Again, nobody wanted to do that. So I said, no, I'll do that. This is, again, before computers. So I had a typewriter and, I had to do all the right justification and the white, I had to plan the whole thing because we didn't have computers that you can just do it.
Wow.
Yeah. And fortunately, I could type thanks to my dad. So I did that and that was a lot of fun. And I did that a year or two. And then I said to the physician advisor, I said, this is really a lot of work. This is more than another coursework. So this is my entrepreneurial side coming out, I guess, but you'll see it didn't work very well. So I said, could I please have credit or pay me to do it? Because this is a lot of work.
Good for you.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And he said, no, we're not giving you either. This is before women got anywhere. By that time, I'd already gotten the recommendation I needed, so I knew that much. So it was funny, though. Guess how much they paid the person who ended up doing it? They hired someone to do it.
A full-time person?
They hired an adult. I was a student. They hired someone because no one else would do it. Guess how much they paid her?
All right. I can't even, how much?
$26,000. At that time, that would have paid for my
That's a
entire
lot of
college
money.
education and all my expenses.
How did that land on you? Because you tried to negotiate for some sort of compensation.
I was a female college kid at that time. I was at a place that had just gone co-ed and they didn't really want women there. I learned later. It was just, that's how it was then. It wasn't an even playing field. So I did that. But that, I did enjoy the writing and I did enjoy that experience. And I did learn some medicine. I'd interview the nurse practitioners and, whoever I found. That's how I approached that, to show an interest in medicine in college without going to the emergency room and hanging out.
Very clever.
Thank you. So then when I went to the pre-med advisor, they said, we're not going to help you because you don't do anything we recommend. I said, okay, thanks. See you later. I wasn't used to getting good advice, so I didn't look for it. I don't really recommend that, but that's how it was then. So
That was then.
it just wasn't that welcoming in terms of mentoring and things like that.
Yeah.
It just wasn't what was offered. So you either toughed it out or you didn't do it.
So you toughed it out. You ultimately go to medical school.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I got into my first choice medical school, which was Columbia. So I went to Columbia and it was a great experience. They do a wonderful job. And I really didn't know what I wanted to specialize in. I try to keep an open mind. They do so well with the clinical rotations. It's really a wonderful place. So there were a lot of things that I liked. And I remember I'm very tall. So I was just under 6 feet when I graduated high school. So I remember I did orthopedics and, they like tall people in orthopedics. So they said, hey, Julie, you should come do orthopedics. And I thought, who would my patients be? Like, who's going to go to a woman orthopedist? At that time, they didn't have female athletes. So I said, who's going to come to me? I don't think anybody will come and see me. Little did I know, there's going to be all these female athletes and this PD ortho.
Right.
But they were very nice and I liked them. I liked a lot of things. I loved surgery. I liked anesthesia and I liked OB-GYN. And then when I did a OB-GYN rotation, there was one woman. That was it. There was only one woman attending, and she was a very lovely woman. But she would do charts till 9 at night. I thought, oh my goodness, the poor thing. To my knowledge, I don't think she ever married. She had no children. And her whole life was that, but she loved it. So I worked with her for a while, and then there were other everybody else was a male in the department, so I worked with them. And I said, well, I like this because you get to do surgery, which I turned out to really like. And you also get to solve complex medical problems. You have all the endocrinology and things like that. And you also get to follow women over time. So what I learned from my mom, she had very devoted patients. They didn't want to leave her. Like they turned 22 or 23 and they didn't want to, because they knew her for a long time and they liked her. I like that continuity aspect. And often if you do surgery, like if you take someone's appendix out or their gallbladder, you may never see them again. But if you're a gynecologist and you do a surgery, they're your patient. As long as they find you're a good fit for them, then you get a chance to follow them. And I've had that privilege in my current practice, which I started more than 30 years ago. Some of the young women that I met them as teenagers, and now they're in their late 40s and early 50s. And it's really neat because I've known them their whole life, their whole adult life.
It's so
I knew them before they went to college, before they got married, if they got married or had kids, So that's kind of cool.
Julia, tell us, in this career, you also became a specialist in an area that, my understanding, didn't have much attention.
No, there's no attention to menopause.
No attention on menopause. I'm so grateful that there finally seems to be, although you wrote a book quite a while ago around this subject. So tell us how that evolved. Menopause, it affects 50% of the population.
Sure.
Yet we weren't researching and writing and talking about it, but you were. Tell us about that.
I trained at Brigham and Women's, which is a wonderful training program in Boston. It's the number one program now in the country, according to some people. I had very good exposure, and one of the leading people there founded the Menopause Society. So there still wasn't that many lectures for the residents, but Dr. Isaac Schiff was an excellent influence. I didn't end up doing that fellowship, but I was very interested in that work. And then I worked at Mount Auburn Hospital, which is a Harvard community hospital where I also taught, but I was an attending physician. And I saw some patients with menopausal concerns then. But then I had an opportunity to open this solo practice that I opened. My husband, Paul, his cousin was down in this semi-rural area I'd never heard of because I'm from New York. And he said, oh, you got to come here. And I'm like, where's here? And he starts naming all these roads. I have no idea what he's talking about because I'd only been in Boston and Cambridge. He said, you really should come down here. We have a good OR and we really need someone like you. And there's no one down here like that. And there were no women down there either, but that's fine. We ended up going. And so it's basically halfway between Boston and Providence. When I came down to this semi-rural area in southeastern Massachusetts, the women were coming to the practice. And at first, women didn't want to see women. There were all kinds of things you wouldn't expect. A lot of people didn't want a woman doctor. They thought it was very strange. And it took a while to get things going. And then I had a patient come in, and she was bringing in a book. And the book was written by an actress, and it was on menopause. And she said, Dr. Edelman, why are you not doing what she says on page 56? And I'm looking at her. I said, well, let's see page 56. So I opened the book. Whatever was on it, it was not the standard of care for medicine. I explained to her why I'm not doing what it says that the actress says I should do on page 56. So she says, well, that's fine, but where am I going to read what you're telling me?
It's not out there.
I don't know of any place. I'll have to write it for you. No. So that's how I decided to write it, because I said, if we're really going to take care of these folks and there's really nothing for them. Now, this was, I think, still before the internet. So we didn't, the Menopause Society has wonderful resources. I'm not saying there's absolutely nothing, but there was very little that women had access to. So I said, well, I think I should probably write it for them. So I set out to write it. And that was my first book, which was Menopause Matters, that Johns Hopkins published. That's how I started on that journey, because she showed me that book.
I love it.
Julia, tell us about the impact of this specialty that you pursued and the writing that you've done in this area and your relationship with money.
It's funny. Writing books is not lucrative if you're writing this kind of book.
But 50% of the population, to Cammie's point earlier, needs this information. It does feel like there's a bit of a disconnect.
I know. The academic publisher I was fortunate enough to have did a lot. I mean, they educated me a lot. So writing a book for the general public, when you're trained in a specialty, so you're not only trained in medicine, but you're trained in a subspecialty of a specialty, you can't use any of your vocabulary. Right? You must know, because you do money tales, so you can't use all technical financial terms because
Sure.
Your audience is not there for that. They're looking to you to educate them and inform them. In medicine, you're encouraged to be very precise, whether you're doing a diagnostic test or a screening test, or are you preventing, or are you early detecting? There's all these nuances. But when you're writing for a general audience, you could have highly educated people or people who might be PhDs in biochemistry or something, and then you could have other people with less education who are very bright, and you don't want to bore your reader, but you don't want to go over people's heads. And so there's a wide range, and you can't tailor it to your audience. So when I'm in the office, I typically like to know where my patient's coming from. If I'm talking to a PhD in biochemistry, I sure like to know. So I gear it the way that I think they would like to hear. But when you're writing, you can't do any of that. So there's a big gap in that. So Johns Hopkins was great about that. They really educated me, Johns Hopkins University Press, for the first book, about, how you do this, because you can't just do it the way you do medicine. And even the way you organize the material, the way people look for it or think about it, is different from how you do it as a physician. And then I wrote another book called Successful Sleep Strategies for Women.
I want to read that, by the way. I saw that in your bio.
It's for women 18 and over, yeah. So
I fit in that demographic.
Well, we all do. Midlife is so common.
Oof.
I was asked to write that when someone saw I had a sleep chapter in the first menopause book. That was not as hard for me because I don't have as much jargon in the sleep area. It was reviewing the literature and giving people evidence-based things that they could try that made sense and make sure they get extra help if those things didn't work. For this book, I hired a developmental editor who was wonderful. I knew more than I did for the first book, but she still helped me a great deal. She would have a very fresh take on things. So she just would make things pop. Like she'd go, hormones, should you take them? I'm like, I wouldn't say that. Like she just had a nice way of cutting through everything. So I read the thousands of articles and, organized everything. And then she would say, well, wait a minute, I don't understand this. And she's very bright and knows science. It was really fun working with her on that. She had a lot of good ideas. She said, hey, maybe we should have a glossary. So we have a glossary. Just the way we work together to organize things, I really enjoyed it.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation, you don't write books to make money, but here you are making an investment in an editor to help you.
Yeah, I did.
How did you think about that? I mean, we don't do everything that we do for money, but I think it's difficult to make a decision about how much of an investment you're willing to make in a product that you're putting out.
It is. I guess I just feel like it's my mission. I mean, I feel like it's something that's really important to me. Women need this resource. I have the ability to give it to them. I would like to cover my expenses. I think that would be good. And I'm working on that. I'm going to try to do more outreach for this one and see how that goes and invest in a different way, and this is helpful.
It is.
Perhaps give the book more visibility. I also wanted it to have a dual purpose. So usually publishers like it to go one place on the shelf, I've learned. So they said, well, no, this is a book for consumers. I said, yes, it is. I want women to have this book. And I wanted all the things to be in one place. So basically from head to toe, what are the mental health changes. There's a chapter, mood, memory, and mental health. So what happens to your brain? What about this brain fog? What's the story with dementia and Alzheimer's? And, why do you feel worse? Many people get more depressed in perimenopause, all those kinds of things. So I wanted women to have the whole picture in one book. I just had this goal, and it was really, really important to me. I think the publisher did very well with that first book. It worked well for them financially. I think for me, it was okay. But I remember my mom, who's, obviously retired now, she said, "Julie, why are you writing this book? You don't make anything." And I said, "Well, I'll make a little, but that's not really why I'm doing it." I found it rewarding that colleagues at the Menopause Society used it in their menopause clinics. They used it to teach their residents and their students and their colleagues who are not in gynecology or menopause. They used it for their patients. And they asked me to write another book, and that made me feel good.
I cannot wait to read this next book of yours. It tells you have an incredible sense of purpose. How do you define success?
That's a great question. I think it's spending your time the way you want and doing what you like to do. And this is what I like to do. I like to do surgery. I got to do that for a long time now. I do office surgery. I like to write. I like to teach. And I like to help women get accurate information to make their lives better. So that's what's important to me. And I have been successful to a degree enough that I'm comfortable and I can do things that I like to do with my family or help out family members like you were talking about earlier and, travel and do some things that I like to do. This is important to me. A lot of people ask me the same question, including my mother, but
your answer was perfect. I loved it.
Yeah, you're a woman with a purpose. Julia, I'm curious, from your perspective, working with women on their health issues for decades, where do you see money and medicine intersecting in the lives of your patients? How does that impact you, if at all?
It definitely impacts their care. So right now, the health crisis is getting worse. There are very large deductibles for a lot of women. In our practice, we take insurance. If they have a $5,000 deductible, they may not get the care because we're paying for the equipment to diagnose their abnormal bleeding or whatever it is that they need, and they may need medications that aren't covered. And so we do our best to help them with that. Financial issues definitely impact, but in the longer term, sometimes people say, "Oh, I can't miss work. I have family obligations." But then those decisions to not diagnose early or screen early can come and get them later, because if they don't diagnose the cancer early, if they have it, then they're going to spend a lot of time away from their family and work getting advanced treatments. So it's really important to understand how to screen for things and diagnose them early, and also understand prevention measures, and you can pick what works for your life. But I try to start even when women are in their 20s. I say to them, look, you want to get enough calcium in your foods so you build strong bones, because this is when your bones are going to be the strongest. And when you get into your late 30s and 40s and beyond, you're going to start losing bones. So these are the things you can do now. And probably most of them think, "Oh, for God's sake, would she bother me with that?" But some people get it. And I try to do the lifestyle things that help women.
I think that's really important. It's sort of like in our line of business with personal finance, you save and invest early because there's a compounding effect.
Absolutely. And I did do that. My first job, I was working very long hours. I saved a ton. I really saved a lot because I was single. I got a few things, but I didn't spend much money on anything. So I saved a lot.
You knew the value of compounding.
And with your health, you want to bank so you have more health span, not just lifespan. So, people look at longevity, but you want to have quality years. You don't want to just have, I don't think most of us want to have longevity without the quality.
As you look at the healthcare landscape and you think about money, what one money wish would you have to change the area in which you work?
Well, I wish women didn't have these large deductibles. So sometimes I'll say, "Gee, I really would like an ultrasound to check on your ovaries and your uterus so we can understand more what's going on." And they'll say, "There's a $500 deductible and I don't have it and I'm not going to do it." So I usually try to work around. I'll say, okay, I understand. We'll do these other things. And when you can, it would be, but women shouldn't have to make those decisions. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. If you're paying insurance premiums, but you can't get your screening test or diagnostic tests, you're really not getting care. And people do it because it's a very difficult economy now. I mean, you know more about it than I do. Of course, people are going to pick insurance plans with a lower premium, but then they have the higher deductible. So it's very difficult for people. So we really need to fix that so they have preventive care and they have access to the services they need to stay healthy, because it costs the system more when you don't do that. So if you don't do the screening, it costs everybody more, because then you're paying for the emergency room visits and the advanced surgery and chemo and radiation. It's not to anyone's benefit, the woman or her family or the system.
The insurance company, actually.
Exactly. That's a whole other discussion, right?
It's a big, important discussion.
It's an important discussion. And I feel very badly. I do have colleagues that have gone to concierge medicine so they can give the time that they want and give the, not be bound by that. But where I am, the population would not be served well by that. So I don't do that at this time. Again, it's another financial decision. So we try to give the very high level of care. We have very good staff, support staff. But it is very challenging to run a medical practice now, because the reimbursements are not proportional to the cost of doing business. You can't just send a bill. Like when my mother was in practice, it was $1 for an injection and $2 for the visit, or whatever it was. And you didn't have to bill insurance unless you delivered a baby, had your baby at the hospital or something. But now you have to send claims and it has to go through a clearinghouse. So you have to pay for the clearinghouse, you have to pay for the biller, and there's electronic submissions and all kinds of bells and whistles. So it isn't just what the doctor's charging, it's all these expenses that increase.
All the infrastructure.
Exactly. There's a tremendous infrastructure. It's a complicated system. It's very unfortunate because people think doctors are charging too much, but it's what we're paying. We have to cover those costs. It's not going to us. It's going to the hospitals and the clearinghouses and so those things are part of the high cost that people don't realize.
That's right.
So that's unfortunate.
Definitely an area that's primed for reimagination.
Yes, that's a lovely way to put it. Reimagination is good. We don't have much imagination going on in healthcare right now. We have restrictions and cuts, but we don't have any imagination, I don't think.
Julia, what's your next money conversation going to be, and who's it going to be with?
Oh, it'll probably be with my husband. Just to see what's worth investing in, how to continue to save, what we want to spend money on. For me, it's always been, going back to the beginning, is how I spend my time, because that's what I value the most. So try to spend time doing things that I like, whether it's writing or, I do enjoy my work, but I'll probably shift the balance at some point. At this point in my career, I try to make sure I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I'm investing in my practice now to have it continue on. We care for a very lovely population, and this menopause especially is still pretty rare across the country. I think it's important that women have access to it. I want to continue that. So the colleague I brought on last fall has become certified in menopause as well, and I've mentored her, and the two of us are delivering this specialized menopause care together. Just see where that goes.
We appreciate you doing that work. I think having more and more emphasis in menopause specialists, it's really interesting that the practice of OB-GYN was supposed to also take on that. It's its own area of study. So we really appreciate you when you're pioneering there. Would you share with our listeners, where is the best place to find you?
The best place to find me is womenshealthne.com, which is New England. WOMENS healthne.com is the practice. I have another website, juliaedelmanmd.com, which there are some treatments that are not yet standard of care, but I think they will be. So for example, 50% of women over 50 have urine control issues. And we have some fabulous new technology that helps that without surgery and without pain.
Sounds good to me. No
So,
surgery,
yeah.
no pain.
Yeah, and no downtime. We have some technologies that help women with some of their goals as they go through these different journeys.
Incredible.
And all those things are on there. And so that's another investment I'm making, is supporting that effort.
Wow.
For folks who are interested in the Savvy Women's Guide to Menopause, where can they find that?
On Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
That's great, Julia. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Money Tales. You are incredible. You're doing incredible work and making such a big difference in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to speak to both of you.
Thanks for listening to the Money Tales podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, share it with someone you think would benefit from listening, and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. Your ratings and reviews help more people find our podcast. If you're inspired to gain clarity and peace of mind about financial matters, don't hesitate to reach out to our team at Asperient. Go to asperient.com/start a dialogue. Or you can email Sandy and me at podcasts@asperient.com. See you next time.